This podcast is part of the It Was a Thing on TV podcast network.
Folks, this is a solemn moment here to start 2026 as we start by talking about two people that we lost. And that's Frosted Cherry and Cookies and Cream. We're going to miss you both.
But we have a fugitive on the run.
Oh, yeah. Protein Slam and Strawberry. He didn't want to get cooked. He said it wasn't his time yet. And so he ran like a coward.
I can't wait to see where this saga takes us at the end of 2026.
But you know what? At least the BYU head coach, he really loved that cookies and cream in his mouth. He had like a giant chunk of it.
That sounds dirty.
Sure, but not as dirty as when you were talking about, hey, you and me did In and Out back a number of years ago. Yeah, that can't be taken out of context, Chico.
Let's talk about David Banner as a magician.
And here's where we put the gif from Saturday Night Live of that one person doing Doug Henning, and it says, magic.
Oh, Shia LaBeouf going, life is full of surprises. Magic.
Oh, that's Shia LaBeouf? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Well, I was watching something in the last couple of days. I think it may have been like Live PD, one of the things on A&E. And they arrested Shia LaBeouf because he was drunk off his ass.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
He was swearing like a sailor and just being really resistant.
That's hilarious.
And I wouldn't have known it was Shia LaBeouf if they didn't say, hey, aren't you Shia LaBeouf? There's some magic happening there, let me tell you.
Not as magical as the time he wished that he would disappear in that Hanukkah episode of Even Stevens. Okay, let's play the theme music now, please.
An anthology on the bad, the short-lived, and forgotten shows and events in television history. You are listening to It Was a Thing on TV.
Time is up. You ran into trouble.
Episode 603, submission number. And I thought we had a submission number for this because I swear we had a number attached to this, but...
Looking for it.
Okay, you look for it, but I've got a submission number if you can't find it. And I'm not editing this out because I do have a valid submission number that I've already put into our document. Submission 226A, but for some reason we couldn't find that, and I actually gave it the submission number 8675309. The Magician. Maybe Tommy Two-Tone took part in this. That's not very easy to say. Maybe Tommy Two-Tone took two. You see, I can't say it. Maybe Tommy Two-Tone took part in this.
Do you think they contacted Jenny?
I wish we had on the soundboard Forrest Gump saying, Jenny, Jenny, Jenny. But regardless, we're here to talk about The Magician, which aired on NBC from March 17th of 1973 until April 15th of 1974 for 21 episodes. Anything in the 1970s, it should be about the absolute wealth of crime dramas. Just off the top of our heads, what shows were there primarily in an hour-long format, maybe even hour and a half, 2 hours, which fell under the crime drama banner? And I'm not talking about Adam 12. Yeah, that's about police, but that's more sort of like a Dragnet type of show. That's not like Mannix or Barnaby Jones or Cannon or numerous other TV shows. Macmillan and Wife. Good heavens, we could be here forever today talking about some of the shows. Even Hawaii Five-0. There were a lot of these types of shows which aired for 60 minutes, 90 minutes, where at the end of the show you have some sort of resolution as to who done it, who got arrested. We have a little twist here this time. Because with The Magician, don't want to surprise anybody, but magic's involved. And not necessarily like the Doug Henning type of magic. There was a lot of different stuff going on here. I saw a couple episodes. You had The Magician, we'll get to him in a second, using not necessarily magic, but deception and illusion to capture the baddies. And there was legitimate magic. You had kind of sort of like Houdini type of escapes. We'll get to that in a little bit. But who is the magician? Tony Blake. Magician by day, cop by night. That would have been a great like selling point. Just go to NBC and say, I got a great TV show for you. Magician by day, cop by night. The Magician. Coming to NBC fall of 1973. So Tony Blake, he was a very rich person. Let me also add that. He had money, he had toys. He lived, at least for the first part of this season that it aired, he lived on a friggin' Boeing like 727. He lived on a plane. And it wasn't like just living on a plane parked in a hangar or on a runway. It actually flew. So he lived in this plane and he drove a white Corvette. I mean, this is like the king of all playboys. Crime-fighting magician, rich as all hell, has all the toys in the world. And it should be noted that, at least for the pilot, the character was named Anthony Dorian, or Tony Dorian. But there is actually a real-life stage magician with that name, so we had to alter that because you don't want to get sued or anything like that. So Tony Blake, he solves crimes through the wonders of legerdemain. Sleight of hand. I'm sorry for using a college word there, legerdemain. You go to college for 7 years. For as much money as I paid, you use all the fancy words you can get. And also there were illusions. Trompe-l'oeil. Not Mr. Blackloy, trompe-l'oeil. Tony Blake, he uses his powers, if you will, his magical powers, for good, not evil. He helps solve crimes. He helps the helpless, kids. He is like a good-hearted magician. He's a good-hearted philanthropist who's got more money than some small countries, and he does good with it. Boy, that's like a heartwarming tale that we need now 53 years later. Somebody with money who actually gives a darn and works for the common man. Before this, he was actually in a prison on an espionage charge in South America. A trumped up one. Or maybe I should say Mr. Blacked up one. I think that's going to be our joke for 2026. Anytime we use the word Trump as in trumped up or trompe-l'oeil, we'll just call it a Mr. Black. But anyhow, he escaped, and that was actually where he started learning how to escape, doing Houdini types of escape tricks. His cellmate actually died and left him a fortune. So that's how he made his money, not just because he's a fancy rich playboy traveling the world in his plane with his white Corvette. Oh no. He was left the money by his cellmate. So Tony Blake, he's got this jet. Again, it's a Boeing jet, a private jet. And if you see it, you'll see it on the show. They show it often enough. It is humongous. It is a passenger-sized plane. And he lives on it. And he's got all sorts of toys on the plane. Advanced technology. And even in his nice white Corvette, he's got a car phone. In 1973, he's got a car phone. He's got more money and more toys than anybody should have. So that's what this series is about, is you've got this magician who sort of solves crimes at night as a side hustle. But that might be the best way of phrasing it. He's a magician by day, but at night, after entertaining the people wherever, he solves crimes. Now, he's only in this plane for about the first 2/3 of the series. He actually ends up moving into, of all places, an apartment at the Magic Castle. And the Magic Castle, in case you don't know, it's in Southern California. That's like where all the magicians hone their craft. I know Mark Summers did stuff at the Magic Castle in his younger days. I'm sure if we took a look at more recent magicians, they honed their craft at the Magic Castle. So this isn't some made up place. No, this is someplace real where you can be entertained by actual magicians who are trying to make it big.
All right, I got to joke you, okay? You know what magician I wish was at the castle? Victor Bruno. Because remember, he was a magician on Super Train Victor Bruno.
Who said he wasn't there?
Do you think Billy Barty was there too?
Oh, Billy Barty, he had to be there, and I'm going to tell you, Greg, there's one reason he would have been there. You know when they do the whole sawing a person in half thing, and the person is actually like stuffed in the top half of the box? He could be the little legs that are like moving in the bottom half of the box.
Oh, God.
It's a perfectly valid explanation. But I'm sure Billy Barty was at Magic Castle at some point. I mean, seemingly everybody was at the Magic Castle at some point. Harry Anderson, I believe, honed his craft there. Somebody we're going to talk about in a little bit, Larry Anderson, he definitely honed his craft there. So yeah, everybody who was like a name with magic worked at the Magic Castle. I bet you Carl Ballantine was at the Magic Castle. Remember, we've talked about him quite a bit. He's in our Hall of Fame, for heaven's sakes. He was somebody, when he appeared on a TV show, he was generally a magician. And funny we talk about Carl Ballantine, because we're going to talk about somebody who was on a series with Carl Ballantine in a little bit when we go through the cast. And speaking of the cast, I think it's a perfectly good time to start talking about people on this show. And we'll start with Tony Blake, the magician, played by Bill Bixby. Yes, we could talk about what he's going to do in about 5 years as David Banner. But I say we go back about 10 years to when he was on My Favorite Martian. Your mileage may vary on that. Playing Max Pomeroy, one of the magician's associates, we just referenced him not even a minute ago talking about Carl Ballantine. We're talking about Keen Curtis, who starred in 1 in a Million with Carl Ballantine. Keen Curtis played John Allen Hill in Cheers. I believe he was the upstairs restaurant owner, the British guy. If you remember all the fights him and Sam had in like the later seasons of Cheers, I think that's who that was. We also talked about him in Amanda's. And I just feel Greg coming up with a what the hell's a Snavely right about now. Because what the hell is a Snavely? Well, we'll find out later this year. I'm sorry, I just like how that whole montage at the end of the year in review show turned out. And then right at the end, Greg chimes in with, what the hell's a Snavely? Every good detective needs a sidekick. Look at the different shows we talked about earlier. Most of them had a sidekick in some sort, and this one's no different. We had a character called Jerry Anderson, also Jerry Wallace. I'm guessing that might be the difference between pilot and regular series. And this character is played by Julian Christopher. Julian Christopher had quite the career. He passed away almost 3 years ago, February of 2023. But he has so many credits to his name. Just looking through his IMDb really fast, I'm not going to go through everything, but an episode of Once Upon a Time, and he did an episode of A Million Little Things back in 2019. He did an episode of The Bionic Woman 20 years ago almost. Smallville, 6 episodes. So, needless to say, he had quite the career. An episode of Saved by the Bell, The New Class. That's a show we don't talk about all that much. Stargate SG-1, Deep Space Nine, Dream On, Doogie Howser for a couple episodes. Needless to say, quite the varied career. Episode of Webster, one of Dynasty, Who's the Boss, Beretta, even the Bob Newhart show back in 73. Even Cannon. He was on an episode of Cannon in 1972. So quite the diverse career. Playing Dominic in this series is Joseph Sorolla. He played Sal Angletti, Lieutenant Sal Drasso, Mr. Silva, a number of roles on Quincy. 5 episodes from 1979 to 1982. He also played Gino Solietto, number 2. Oh no, that means there's a Gino Solietto number 1 out there somewhere. But regardless, he played that Gino Solietto number 2 on The City. 70 episodes from 1996 to 1997. He was on 2 episodes of Silk Stockings, guys. I don't think he was the man meat of the week. He was also on 753 episodes of Somerset. Little daytime drama action from 1973 to 1976. Rudy Alariz and Fred Harrington. So again, needless to say, he has had quite the varied career. The last name we'll go over, playing Kathy or Connie, I'm guessing again, separation between pilot and regular series, is Cammie Sebring. This is about as good as it gets for her. Actually, she was on an episode of Quincy in 1980 and something called The Gnome Mobile in 1967, and that's literally her career. I need to see what the Gnome Mobile is. In the Redwood Forest of California, a multimillionaire lumberman and his 2 young grandchildren encounter 2 gnomes who are supposedly the last of their kind. I was going to say, why does this read like a Disney movie? Because it is a Disney movie. With Walter Brennan, Richard Deacon. I'm sorry, that's all I need to say. Walter Brennan and Richard Deacon. I'm sold. Matthew Garber. Ed Wynn. Man, that sounds like a really fun time.
If only Keenan was there in the cast too.
Well, he was too busy building the super train at this point. Even though it didn't take 12 years to build the super train, I'm just using that as an excuse.
No, he was too busy plotting against Flubber and poor Herbie.
He was too busy appearing on that episode of You Don't Say back in the 60s. Now that we've got the major people out of the way, how about we take a look at some episodes? As I said, we've got 21 of them to go through, including the pilot. That's a good place to start. The pilot, a magician is asked by the mother of a plane crash victim to check into a possible conspiracy. He discovers that the plane crash was staged. I don't want to spoil anything, but it seems like a lot of things on this show were staged. We'll get into what I'm talking about in a little bit because there's some staging in one of the episodes that I saw, and I don't think that's by coincidence. Playing Lulu is Joan Caulfield. She's primarily somebody from early Hollywood, at least in terms of television, early television, but even before that. She was on 82 episodes of a series I've never heard of from 1953 to 1955, My Favorite Husband, with Barry Nelson. Hey, the first James Bond on television. We have several other names in this pilot episode, playing Mr. Ratter, Robert Mandan from Soap, and Three's a Crowd. But also playing Mary Rose Coogan in the pilot, Anne Lockhart, daughter of Jim Lockhart, who we just lost not that long ago, but also she was in Battlestar Galactica. The pilot originally aired on March 17th of 1973 as a 90-minute movie, I'm guessing sort of in that NBC murder mystery movie lineup. Just stuck it in there to see how it would work. Ratings weren't too bad. They brought the series back for a true dedicated run in fall of 1973. And the first episode of that is The Manhunters. Someone is trying to kill Max Pomeroy, Tony Blake's friend. The investigation leads Blake to an alcoholic lady gambler in distress, and the plot thickens in a casino. That's another thing I noticed. There's a lot of cards, gambling. I don't think this is specifically set in Vegas. But again, watching the couple of episodes that I saw, there's a lot of scenery, a lot of props that are related to cards. And I totally get that. What does a magician usually deal with? Deck of cards. So not maybe terribly surprising in that regard. In this episode, we have a character named Diane Thompson, played by Marlon Mason. She's one of those actresses who's had a very lengthy career, has done probably everything. And unfortunately, I don't think we can maybe pin her down to one role. She's just one of those people who has been on many shows. And taking a look real fast, the one thing I see for her, 4 episodes of Barnaby Jones from 1973 to 1979. But again, I know the name from stuff beyond that. 5 episodes of Love American Style OG, not the new Love American Style, because who actually watched the new Love American Style?
Well, remember, me and the G-Man agreed that it was just okay.
Well, it was just okay. They put it in that ABC lineup, and right around that time, what were they airing? They had, I think, Bruce Forsyth's Hot Streak, and I think they had All-Star Blitz. So it wasn't like in a really good lineup. Family Feud got canceled earlier that year. So you're not replacing Family Feud with anything of high quality, as much as maybe we might like All-Star Blitz or Hot Streak or what have you. It was just crappy filler. And I'm glad we got to hear about the G-Man to start off 2026.
I don't know where he is right now, the G-Man. I haven't heard from him in a while. I'm sure we'll hear from him soon this year.
We're going to quickly move to episode 2, getting away from talk about the G-Man. Episode 2 is titled The Vanishing Lady. When Julie Carter, the singer in Tony Blake's Vegas magic act and personal friend, is kidnapped in her dressing room, the magician has to race against time to save her. I'm only mentioning this person because I've seen this person's name on many Quinn Martin episodes. Playing Lieutenant Phil Corcoran is Ramon Beer Eye. And all you need to know is he made numerous appearances on Quinn Martin shows. He did play Elijah Crow on Brett Maverick back in 1981 and 82. We do have one more name, and this one, kind of surprising when you hear the name and what he is known for. Playing Sergeant Drake in this episode, Craig Morton. We're talking about the quarterback, Craig Morton. First round pick of the Dallas Cowboys in 1965, Craig Morton.
And hold up, guys. This will not be the last time this year we're going to be talking about Craig Morton.
I'm intrigued. I don't know where you're going with that. Don't spoil anything, but interesting. We went 6+ years without talking about Craig Morton in the past, and we're going to talk about him twice this year. That will take us to episode 3. And episode 3 is titled Illusion and Terror. A car accident sees Tony Blake's girlfriend Joanna taken by ambulance and soon pronounced dead, but the body has vanished. Suspecting foul play, Blake investigates Joanna's past, and what he finds endangers his own life. This is one of the episodes I saw. As I said, there's a lot of technology going on, either really current technology from 1973 in terms of the car phone I talked about earlier, but also the baddies in this episode had a device where they sort of got the transmission of the car phone by determining what wavelength it was going at. So they sort of intercepted the calls, and that's how Tony Blake sort of got in the situation while investigating the girlfriend's death. And because of this, he ended up actually getting pistol whipped at the family farm of the girlfriend. And they hung him up and set the barn on fire. And this is where the whole Houdini stuff came in. He comes around and he unties himself and gets out of the barn. He's a magician. He's a magician of all sorts of stuff. It isn't just pick a card, is this your card? Is this your card? He's not that type of magician. He does a little bit of everything. I think this is a great time to mention that the series was created by Bruce Lansbury, Angela Lansbury's brother. In addition, playing Rich in this episode, you wouldn't know him as an actor per se. You'd know him from one line which has been repeated for seemingly 60 plus years, talking about MacDonald Carey, like sands through the hourglass, those are the days of our lives. And that's his line. Episode 4 is titled Lightning on a Dry Day. A hospital patient is spooked senseless by the fire in one of Tony's charity magic acts. His investigation into the young man's past leads him to a small town riddled with suspicious residents. And if these are some of the suspicious residents, this is a pretty weird town. I say that in the nicest way possible. Playing Vic Reiser is Jeffrey Duell, the brother of Pete Duell, who didn't have a very long life. He was on Alias Smith and Jones in 1971 and 72, but he passed away on December 30th of 1971, so he literally passed right in the middle of the run. But we have another super big name as presumably another resident in this town. Playing Ian Kiefer. What's a Kiefer? Well, I'll tell you what a Kiefer is. How about Mark Hamill? All we need to say is Luke Skywalker, to be honest. And this is actually his 11th appearance, according to IMDb. I thought this would be early in his career. His career actually started in 1963 on General Hospital. He must have been a little kid at that point. But he was on an episode of Canon first season, looks like 1971, Night Gallery in 72, Room 222 in 73, and then later in 73, here he is on The Magician. Episode 5 is titled Ovation for Murder. During a backyard party where Tony Blake performs, the magician witnesses a Greek man he rescued earlier shoot another man. Blake suspects he was impaired and arranges an elaborate illusion in a hospital to catch the real killer. Nobody of note in that episode, so we'll move on to episode 6, Man on Fire. While arguing with her boyfriend, a woman falls downstairs and dies. The man is coerced into stuffing her body in a trunk and tossing it in a lake. Tony Blake gets involved when bad guys come after his new magic student, the man's son.
Guys, I have an update on that Mark Hamill episode of Canon that he was on.
An instant update, okay.
Okay. I'm going to mention 2 people were on this episode, and you're going to say right away, 5 Canon episode. Not 5, 5 plus with Mark Hamill in it. Okay? Here are the 2 names. Crew Gallagher, and the second one, I hope you're sitting down, Joan Van Ark.
Okay. Okay. If it took place at the Tokyo Dome, that's a 7 Canon episode.
You know what? If that episode was streaming on HBO Max, I bet it would have gotten 11 billion views. That episode of Canon.
Now, what season was that, if you don't mind me asking?
Season 1, episode 4.
Oh, okay. So that aired on MeTV probably in the last month and a half or so. Okay. Because they're somewhere in the middle of season 2 right now. In this episode, playing Paul Ryerson is Carl Betts. He played the father on The Donna Reed Show, 272 episodes. Who doesn't like the wholesomeness of The Donna Reed Show? That was a staple on Nick at Night in my household. We liked Donna Reed.
I was more of a Patty Duke guy, but okay.
Patty Duke was a little goofy for me. The whole cousins and whatnot, both being played by Patty Duke. I think Donna Reed is more of a wholesome family type of setting. Nothing wrong with Patty Duke, don't get me wrong. I just think it's a little more wholesome, more realistic.
Oh, I agree. Donna Reed is very wholesome, but I would much prefer Patty Duke.
You're talking about the show or the person?
The show.
Okay, I didn't know if you had the thing for her, as a teenager back in the 60s, especially playing the dual roles. I didn't know if you're talking about the show or the person. I wanted to get clarification there. What?
You think this is some somewhere in time shit with like me in 1995 wanting to go back to the 60s?
I'm not saying no, but it's possible. Because they're cousins, identical cousins. Never mind. Episode 7 is titled Lady in a Trap. Out scuba diving, Tony Blake rescues a ditzy librarian he met earlier. That's what it says here, a ditzy librarian whose boyfriend tossed her off his yacht with intention to kill. An antique Machiavelli book becomes the pivotal point of Blake's investigation. One name of note, playing Ralph Turner in this episode, is Anthony Isley, best known for playing Tracy Steele on 98 episodes of Hawaiian Eye, if you remember that in the late 50s and early 60s. There's another show we don't talk about all that much, Hawaiian Eye. He was on 3 episodes of Nuts Landing, too. 84-85 season. Episode 8 is titled The Man Who Lost Himself. A man fleeing pursuers crashes into Tony Blake's stage, sending both of them to the hospital. The man wakes up as an amnesiac, and Blake enlists his friends to help the man recover his memory. And oh my gosh, we have a lot of names on this episode. Sit back, we might be here for a little while. We'll start with George Blaisdell on this episode, played by Joe Flynn. Captain Binghamton on 138 episodes of McHale's Navy back in the 60s. And he didn't live much longer after this episode. He died July in 1974, age 49. Playing Dr. Nora Zabriskie in this episode, Yvonne Craig. Batgirl.
No, Mike, it's Batgirl, 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 Batgirl. Where do you come from? Where do you go?
Like I said, Batgirl.
Batgirl, 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 Batgirl.
Okay, I'm sorry. It sounds like you're saying that girl, and I'm wondering where Marla Thomas comes into play in all this.
No, I'm singing the song for Batgirl when she's riding on the horse.
I get that, but you sound like you're saying that girl. That girl, that girl, that girl, that girl. It's like, okay, I'm waiting for like Ted Bessel to appear now. All right, coming back to reality now. Some more names in this episode. Playing Timothy Dunnigan in this episode is George Murdoch. We've talked about him in the past, and oh my gosh, how we talked about him. He played Laszlo Gabov in What the Country? I want to be an American. No, never mind. We've done enough singing about Batgirl. We don't need to start singing about I want to be an American. Oh my
in
God.
Soviet Russia, girl bats you.
Girl bats you.
Now, hold on. In some alternate dimension, I want to imagine a universe where Yakov Shmirov is the Joker. Wouldn't that be hilarious?
Playing Jonathan Gordon in this episode is Hal Williams. We're talking about Officer Smitty on Sanford and Son, but you'd know him better as Marley Gibbs' husband on 227. Episode 9 is titled Nightmare in Steel. The husband of Tony Blake's clumsy new assistant has been kidnapped and is forced to help hijack a tanker. Tony infiltrates the tanker to rescue the man and avert the crime before it's too late. There's nobody really of note in this episode, so we'll go to episode 10, which is titled Shattered Image. Tony Blake must protect a little girl who is targeted by her father's former mob associates. In the process, Tony attempts to clear the man's name, who himself is on the run, framed for murder. Playing Frank Mitchell in this episode is Joseph Campanella, not Roy Campanella.
Never forget, Kiesel didn't know who Roy Campanella was.
We did have to educate her about that.
What?
You're correct.
She's a girl.
That's kind of sexist. She's a girl. No.
Hey,
Roy
I can
Campanella.
see that. She's my sister.
Well, the thing is, Roy Campanella's an old player. There's nothing wrong with not knowing people from back in the 50s and 60s. But regardless, talking about Joseph Campanella, he was on 25 episodes of Mannix as a number of characters.
And he was on Dynasty.
Well, I was going to say, he was also on Dynasty, but yeah, I didn't want to totally bury the lead since I know you guys like your Dynasty.
Oh, and he was also a judge on a couple episodes of Knots Landing. So there you go.
And by extension, if he was on Dynasty, he had to be on the Colbys, and he was for 8 episodes. Episode 11 is titled The Illusion of the Curious Counterfeit Part 1. Performing at the Magic Castle, Tony notices his ex-girlfriend in the audience, looking distraught. A man behind her is acting strange. Tony invites her on stage and makes her vanish, but the bad guy is fast on their trail. There's a lot of this disappearing stuff in these episodes. I think that might be one of the reasons why the show only lasted 1 season. We'll get to that in a little bit. But we do have some names in this episode. Playing Johnson is L.Q. Jones. L.Q. Jones is one of those people that looks like old-time Hollywood Western. 5 episodes of Renegade. He did numerous different TV shows and movies in that Western genre. Walker, Texas Ranger did an episode. The Legend of Grizzly Adams in 1990, he did an episode. We may have talked about him in the past because he did an episode of Voyagers. But he just looks like old Hollywood, especially in Westerns. Young Maverick, he was on an episode. How the West Was Won, he was on an episode. Needless, and shows like Wagon Train, Rawhide, Branded. Again, all Westerns. They all sort of fit his bill. Cimarron Strip, Hondo, The Big Valley. I mean, the one thing I don't see him on Wild Wild West. 25 episodes of The Virginian. So again, he is seemingly on every Western in terms of movies and TV shows outside of the Wild Wild West, it seems. That will take us to episode 12, which, believe it or not, is called The Illusion of the Curious Counterfeit, Part 2. When his attempt to free his ex-girlfriend from a cell fails, Tony has a confrontation with her ex-mobster father. L.Q. Jones is in this second part as well. But we do actually have a new name who wasn't in Part 1, in Part 2, playing J.J. Walters, or Joy Walters, Barbara Rhodes, Busting Loose in 1977. Not the Busting Loose with Jimmy Walker. Busting Loose with Paul Sylvan, who we've talked about in the past. But also, she was on a number of episodes of Password Plus. She played some games back in the late 70s, early 80s. And also, she was on Soap, specifically the final season, 80-81. I'm trying to remember what role she played. I don't think she was one of Jodie Dallas's girlfriends at that point. May have been. But I remember her from that story arc in that final season. Episode 13 is titled The Illusion of the Stainless Steel Lady. When an attractive blonde claims to be the granddaughter of his reckless movie star friend, Tony Blake suspects an imposter, but still joins her in investigating Irene Denore's bizarre self-imposed isolation. One name in this episode, playing Ted Winters. Didn't really have to change his name much for this episode. It's Edward Winter. He was on 7 episodes of MASH from 1973 to 1979. He also gave voices to a number of Nick cartoons back in the day. The Angry Beavers, Real Monsters. He was a voice on an episode of Duckman, one of our personal favorites. He was also on 13 episodes of Herman's Head back in the day. Another one of those under-acclaimed shows from Fox's early years. He also played William Bud Coleman on 34 episodes of 9 to 5. Not the original run. This appears to be in syndication 1986 to 1988.
So the last 2 seasons of 9 to 5 then.
Well, 9 to 5 didn't last all the way to 86 in a network form. Because I thought it lasted till like 83 or 84.
Yeah, it lasted 3 seasons on network, then an additional 2 in syndication.
I don't even remember it going to syndication. Maybe I just wasn't paying enough attention. Episode 14 is titled The Illusion of the Queen's Gambit. No, Gambit's on another network. Oh, never mind. Tony is performing on board of the Queen Mary when masked robbers interrupt his act. His friend Ed Cassidy is blamed for the robbery, and Tony Blake sets out to prove his innocence. Oh, they got a name to play that Ed Cassidy character. And this, I think, would really sort of be in a period where his career was in a little bit of a lull. It was way before T.J. Hooker, and it was a little bit after Star Trek. Talking about William Shatner. So, he delivered every line like this. Maybe. Another name that I'm going to just throw out, maybe not the biggest of names. I recognize the name from different TV shows. Playing Virginia Miles is Brooke Bundy. She's had quite the career. She's still around at 82 years of age. The place that I saw her pretty recently, I'd say within the last month or so, as we've mentioned in the past, one of the shows that I watch as I'm getting ready for work is Adam 12. And not joking, they showed an episode from probably like 1974, 1973, not that long ago. And this woman who played a wife, and I think she was actually arrested in this episode. She was not entirely innocent in this episode. I was just blown away by her beauty, and I said, I gotta see who this woman is. And it's Brooke Bundy. And she was just, like I said, drop dead friggin' absolutely gorgeous. But she's done much more than just a random episode of Adam 12. She was on 174 episodes of Days of Our Lives back in the mid to late 70s, 75 to 77. But also from 77 to 81, she was on 474 episodes of General Hospital as Diana Taylor. Actually, it may not have been Adam 12. It might have actually been Dragnet, now that I think about it. Because she never appeared on Adam 12. But still, again, absolutely drop-dead gorgeous whenever this was. And actually, taking a look at IMDb, it would have been 1968. Episode 15 is titled The Illusion of Black Gold. Tony stages an elaborate illusion to fake the death of a defecting scientist who can extract oil from shale rock, but the scientist is kidnapped and auctioned off to the highest bidder. And this may very well be that scientist who gets auctioned off. Playing Nelson Paradine, Eric Braeden, YNR. He's been on YNR for seemingly ever, it seems. We do have one other name in this episode. Playing Stacy Hyatt is Linda Day George. From Mission Impossible, 1971 to 73, 44 episodes. Episode 16 is titled The Illusion of the Lost Dragon. In order to find a jade dragon which has been stolen from his very old friend in Chinatown, Tony will have to face a horrible death in a lava pit when the floor is literally taken out from under him. I don't know if this is a character name or if he's going by his real name, but somebody we talked about earlier this episode, Larry Anderson's in this episode. Young Larry Anderson would have been probably about 21 at this point. I'm sorry, we should call him by his proper name. It was the thing on TV, Hall of Famer Larry Anderson. We didn't talk about him on this show, but he hosted Truth or Consequences darn close to 40 years ago at this point. Good heavens, we're getting old if Truth or Consequences from the 80s is 40 years old. But we did talk about him on that Let's Get Personal pilot with Sally Julian and TV's Timothy Stack. Episode 17 is titled The Illusion of the Deadly Conglomerate. Tony reconnects with a homeless old magician friend. The shelter where he's landed specializes in murdering the downtrodden for profit, and it's up to the magician to rescue him before it's too late. Murdering the downtrodden for profit? What do they think this is? An HMO? Chico, I know you're laughing. HMO, yes! I see you doing the old golf clap there. Hashtag free Luigi. No, never mind. Larry Anderson once again appears in this episode as Larry Anderson. We have some other names besides Larry Anderson. Playing Reverend Wally Snyder is Eugene Roach. Maybe not necessarily known for one role. Where I know him from was the first couple seasons of Soap. He played E. Ronald Malou, who was the lawyer for, I think, the Tates. I think it was Jessica Tate when she was going a little crazy in the Cabeza. He was her lawyer. But beyond that, he did so much other stuff as well. Not just the lawyer on parts of a 2-season arc of Soap. Another name playing Frank Denbo is Jack Ging. And where I recognize that name from, he played Lieutenant Ted Quinlan on Riptide, which you can see weekdays on MeTV Plus. They've started airing that at, I think, 6 o'clock at night. Or 5 o'clock. I think it's right before or right after Crazy Like a Fox. So you can watch those kind of short-lived-ish series from the mid-'80s.
And just to note, as we all know, the robot was the real star of Riptide.
I was opening the door for you to say that. I knew you were going to say that. I was going to add it, but I knew you were going to say that, and I'm glad you said what you said. The robot was Riptide. Absolutely.
It wasn't Joe Penny, it wasn't Perry King, and it wasn't Tom Bray. It was the robot.
And it certainly wasn't Jack Ging. Only a couple more episodes to go. The 18th of which is The Illusion of the Fatal Arrow. In order to prevent further murders by a hitman who uses a bow and arrow, Tony partners with a psychic who accurately predicted the first victim's death. Larry Anderson's in this episode. So that's 3 in a row that he's been on. But we do have a name playing Jerry Purcell. Tim Matheson. Animal House. The West Wing. So many things. Tim Matheson is not a nobody. Episode 19 is titled The Illusion of the Lethal Playthings. Someone is trying to kill a friend of Dominic's by detonating bombs and using marionettes and remote-controlled toys. Tony's investigation brings him to a toy shop, and he becomes the target of the madman. Didn't we see this on Sledgehammer, where the guy was taking a bath and he got killed by a boat or a tank that went into the bathroom? Sounds a lot like that. Larry Anderson is in this episode as well. 2 more episodes to go. Episode 20 is titled The Illusion of the Cat's Eye. An insurance agent enlists Tony's help to investigate the smoke and mirrors theft of a highly guarded Egyptian cat statue. And yet again, Larry Anderson is in this episode. I'm guessing he may have come on in later episodes, maybe as a sidekick of some sort, maybe an apprentice. Can't say I saw any of the later episodes. We have a couple of names, the first of which is Lieutenant Jack Kendricks in this episode is played by J.J. Saunders. We talked about him in the past because he played Mac on Salvage 1. I love me a good Salvage 1 reference. The other name I'm going to mention is Suzanne Kelly in this episode, played by Claudette Nevins. Maybe not the most popular name, but she did quite a bit of everything back in the 60s through the 2000s. And she hasn't been with us for about 6 years. That will take us to the final episode, which is called The Illusion of the Evil Spikes. Notice everything is like the illusion, especially in these last probably dozen or so episodes. Just something I noticed. The Illusion of the Evil Spikes. A magician is killed during the filming of a highly risky magic trick. Tony takes on both the investigation and his friend's place in recreating the Table of Death illusion for the cameras. And they got a lot of names for this last episode. Good heavens, did they get a lot of names. Just add that Larry Anderson's back, but we got 3 legit names besides that. Playing Marion Tripp in this episode is Jessica Walter. Where should we start? I mean, we could start at Archer. We could start at Arrested Development. But she's one of those people who, for the better part of 50 years, did plenty of work. But I think y'all would know her best from those 2 roles. And I can't believe it's almost been 5 years since she passed. That's amazing.
I know. Yeah.
The time really flies. It seems like she just passed like 3 years ago. Nope, it's been 5 years. The third name, I'm going to include Larry Anderson as a name, so we've covered 2. The third name, playing Max Braden, is Lou Ayres. And we've definitely talked about Lou Ayres in the past. Lime Street, 8 episodes, the entire series. He played Henry Wade Culver. He also was on an episode of Hotel, which surely means we talked about him with every guest ever when we did that back in May of last year. He was on an episode of Flying High back in 78. One of our early episodes. It's been well over 6 years since we talked about that. But regardless, a definite known entity in that regard. But the last name, maybe not saving the best for last. I don't think this is the best for last because Jessica Walters is pretty darn good. But playing a script supervisor, that's his role. Script supervisor is George Weiner, Colonel Sanders on Spaceballs.
What are you, chicken? You missed the name, though, Mike.
Okay.
Playing R. John Fellows, Herbert Anderson, Henry Mitchell from Dennis the Menace.
Now, you see, when you said the name, I pulled him up on IMDb, and you may have seen my mouth drop because just looking at the photo, that's Dennis the Menace's father.
You grew up watching Dennis the Menace on Nick. How could you not recognize the face?
I really didn't watch that much Dennis the Menace, at least comparatively speaking to, let's say, the Donna Reed show. Or even Patty Duke. I'm not even joking about that. I saw a lot more of Patty Duke and Donna Reed than I did of Dennis the Menace back in my childhood, the late 80s, early 90s.
Let me just say, the opening to Dennis the Menace. When you watched that opening, you knew you were going to be in for a ball of a half hour.
Now, we are talking about the Joseph Kearns as Mr. Wilson, Dennis the Menace, not the Gale Gordon as Mr. Wilson.
Sure.
I'm with Greg. I was not going to say anything, but sure, yes. So that's the series, 21 episodes. What happened? Well, we can take a look at the ratings. We can take a look at the schedule, which we'll definitely do. But I mentioned to the guys before we started recording, I think this show sort of has a similar problem to one that we've talked about in the past for other shows. Yes, you've got 21 episodes here for the first season. What are you going to do for the second season that doesn't make it redundant? There's only a finite number of illusions, magic tricks, stuff like that you can use. So maybe it loses its luster because, hey, it's the same trick that he did previously. It's another Houdini act where he's getting out of chains or untangling ropes or whatnot to escape. I think that's the big problem, at least with this show. Not even taking a look at the ratings, is yeah, this is good for one season, but what's going to be different in the next season? Unfortunately, I don't think there's not going to be much real creativity in the second season unless they go, let's say, 10 years into the future and somehow the magician makes the Statue of Liberty disappear. Or something like that. Something just absolutely mind-blowing, amazing. Since we're talking about, and I use this term very loosely, a rinky-dink magician, not in terms of David Copperfield or anybody like that, you're going to be just doing illusions and deception and other things that have been done time and time and time again. So maybe it gets a little repetitive. But we'll still take a look at the ratings because the ratings may give us a different story. So I have the ratings from just after the show's premiere. This is from October 1st to the 7th of 1973. Out of 65 shows, The Magician came in tied at 26th with Police Story. So it's above that halfway point. But maybe it's sort of falling behind with the other shows of that era we talked about earlier. If I just take a look at the ratings really fast, Hawaii Five-0 was 4th. The Rookies was 16th. Cannon was 20th. Vanacek was 23rd. Police Story was tied with Magician at 26th. 3-Year-Old Dan August reruns were 30th. Ironside 34th. Mannix is 46th. Barnaby Jones 54th. The New Perry Mason 57th. Totally forgot that the New Perry Mason was on this season, 73-74. So it's kind of sort of in the middle of the pack when it comes to crime dramas. If we look ahead to January, and this is the week of January 14th through the 20th of 1974, out of 62 shows, The Magician came in at 48th. That's kind of a big drop. Not good. If we skip ahead to late February of 74, out of 62 shows, The Magician was 39th. So it's teetering at about the 2/3 mark at this point. Or about 3 weeks later, March 11th to 17th, out of 63 shows, it was 33rd. So it's literally right at the median point. And the last week I have is March 17th to the 24th. Out of 57 shows, The Magician came in at 43rd. So maybe the ratings weren't that great. They definitely went down as time went on. Maybe viewers saw past the illusion that The Magician was a creative show. As we talked about in the preview for this show, this is like one of the most acclaimed one-season shows ever, even if the ratings didn't really justify it. It is a fascinating show. Like I said, I saw a couple of episodes. I'm seriously considering buying it on DVD, which you can do. Amazon has this entire series for $25. I think it's a clever enough show that's worth at least one watch. I don't know if I necessarily want to invest $25 if I'm only going to see a series one time, but I've spent more on less, as Greg would say. Oh, spoiler. I spent more money than that on, I don't know. I don't want to say less. Might be the best thing ever. You may or may not see it by the time this episode gets released. It depends when it gets delivered, but Greg and I did really well the last couple of days. We found something that is so mind-blowingly amazing. And Greg even gave me an ultimatum. If you don't buy this, I'm going to buy this. And lo and behold, I bought it because I'm a sucker. But no, it's super cool. You may see it in the very near future. If we take a look at the schedule real fast, The Magician originally aired at 9 p.m. on Tuesday nights for an entire hour. At that time, it went up against the latter two-thirds of ABC's Tuesday Movie of the Week. But on CBS, I don't think you're beating the second half hour of Hawaii Five-0 in the 9 o'clock half hour. There were Tuesday night movies which started in the 9:30 hour, specifically Hawkins and Shaft. I'm guessing Shaft is a television adaptation of the movie. The Magician then moved in early 74 to 8 to 9 p.m. You're not beating either of these shows. You're not beating Gunsmoke in the second to last season. It was the 15th rated show in television, even after 19 years at that point. But on ABC, this isn't as good as Gunsmoke, but this is a good show in its own right. You're not beating the Rookies. You're not beating Sam Melville and Kate Jackson. I think that schedule change speaks volumes, and it's just not escaping two top 25 shows in the Rookies and Gunsmoke. And alas, after 21 episodes, The Magician disappeared into thin air. Did you like that? I did that little sound effect. I'm a human Foley studio. I do my own sound effects and my own stunts.
But you don't do Windows.
Oh, I do Windows. I do Windows 11. I just don't do Macintosh.
Ha ha!
That's random. Oh my gosh.
If this is an indicator of how the next year is going to be, this is going to be a pretty damn fun year.
I was going to say, if this is an indicator as to how 2026 is going to be, we should just apologize right now. As I said earlier, you can get this complete series on DVD. It was released on DVD in 2017. I found it a couple of hours before the show began for $25 on Amazon. I'm sure if you look elsewhere, you might be able to find it for less. I only saw some bits and pieces on YouTube, so you can't find the series there, but you can find at least one complete episode there. So go check it out. Make your own determination, all that fun stuff. But even though it only ran for a single season, there was a lot of influence on future series from The Magician. The X-Files creator Chris Carter has said that this show was a favorite of his. And he actually worked it into Fox Mulder's origin story. A teenage Mulder was waiting to watch The Magician when her sister Samantha was abducted by mysterious forces. In Quantum Leap, one of our favorites around here, the episode The Great Spontini, Scott Bakula's character leaps into an amateur magician in 1974 who aspires to appear on Bill Bixby's The Magician. However, owing to his partial amnesia, Dr. Samuel Beckett, at first, can only recall Bixby's connection with the Incredible Hulk, which obviously hadn't been made at that time. And since we're talking about the Incredible Hulk, how about we make a connection there, since Bill Bixby was on the Incredible Hulk? That series featured an episode that paid homage to both The Magician and My Favorite Martian. In the Incredible Hulk's My Favorite Magician episode, Bixby's character became the temporary apprentice to a stage magician played by Bixby's My Favorite Martian co-star, Ray Walston. And we even have a Deep Space Nine connection here, guys, since I know you love your Deep Space Nine. Actor Andrew Robinson has stated that his Star Trek Deep Space Nine character, Elam Garrick, was partially influenced by Bixby's character. So the show lived on in some ways. Now, beyond the DVDs, I have not seen this on television in some time, which is a darn shame. I mean, this is perfect for some retro network to air on weekends. 21 episodes, you air it on Saturdays and Sundays. That's 10 and a half weeks of content right there. Or if you do it just once a week, there's 21 weeks of content. That takes about 5 months to get through. But I'm surprised this hasn't seen more airings in recent years. You never know. Might show up somewhere someday. Alas, in the end, the magician just didn't have enough tricks up his sleeve, and he disappeared into thin air and became the first thing on TV in 2026. You can find us at our website, itwasathingontv.com, on Facebook at It Was a Thing on TV Podcast, and elsewhere at It Was a Thing on TV. You can find us on any podcast player, and we're also on YouTube, where you can subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with our releases, including what's coming up next time. Oh, if you haven't had enough magic goodness in this episode, Chico has some news for you.
Earlier last year, I announced that my Money in the Bank pick was going to be Black's Magic featuring Hal Linden and Harry Morgan, which prompted the scheduling of this episode beforehand, sort of part A and part B. We had the part A, now we're going to get the part B, where we have, fast forward 15 years, and another magician is playing Private Eye with his con artist father. So more magic and a couple more tricks, even more than the magician had, are coming up as NBC makes the premise reappear sometime in the future, right here on It Was a Thing on TV. For Greg, for Mike, I'm Chico. Thank you ever so much for listening. Please be kind to one another, and we will see you for the next one.
Wow!
Get ready to match the stars! Bam Sumter! Stephen Nielsen Terry! Sarah Annette Cruz! Nancy Nan George! Dixie Baudet! And Master of Illusion, Dirk Denston! As we play the star-studded big money game, It's a Match! And now here's your host, Guy Lang! And now here's your host, Guy Lang!
Oh no! Oh my God!
Sorry to interrupt the show. I'm Detective Rob Perkins from the Burbank Police Department. It appears that Guy Lang has been murdered in his dressing room.
What?
Oh, my word. Life is full of surprise.
Sir, please, Guy Lang is dead.
Not as dead as Steven's pool party last night.
The only thing dead at my party was the Salisbury stack.
You're all kidding aside, a man's been murdered here. I'm afraid I can't let any of you go until you answer a couple of questions. What were each of you doing at 2:30 this afternoon? Pam?
I do it every day at 2:30, whether I'm with someone or not. It's making whoopee.
2:30. 2:30. I should have wrote Chinese dentist, but I also said making whoopee.
I don't know if this counts, Rob, but mouth whoopee.
I said making whoopee in the kitchen, Rob, but like everything I make in the kitchen, I ruined it.
Making whoopee is what I wanted to write, because that's what I was doing all night. But my wife's out of town, and I know she would frown. So I wrote, getting my hair done.
I seem to have lost my cards. Would you mind checking your inside coat pocket for me?
Okay, making whoopee. All right. Very good. All right. I need to remind everyone that this is a murder investigation. I need answers. Where was the last place you saw Mr. Lang? Pam.
I said in Steven's bedroom.
Nancy Nan.
I thought I saw him at a whorehouse, but then I realized it was Steven's boudoir.
Excuse me, I'm happily married.
Sarah Annette.
The same place I auditioned for this show, Steven's bedroom.
I hope my wife's not watching.
Gypsy.
Steven's bedroom. Over 1 million served.
I have children.
Steven.
In my bedroom. I have a secret life.
Oh, it's no secret.
I know you're all a bunch of rum-soaked, oversexed washouts, okay?
Thank you for noticing.
Your longtime host has been brutally murdered. Don't you get it? He's inside this body bag. Hey, where'd the little magic guy go?
I was in here, thanks to the powers of magic.
Okay. I gotta give it up to you. That was a pretty neat trick.
No, it wasn't. It's actually really gross. There's a dead body in here.